Thank you for tuning in to this Lamb Talks podcast, presented by Lambda Kappa Sigma, professional fraternity for women in pharmacy. My name is Alexis Nieszczur from the Alpha Mu chapter at the University of Toledo, and I will be presenting today on Literate Lambies, the right stuff. So a little bit about me. I am a P3 PharmD student at the University of Toledo representing the Alpha Mu chapter. I have served as corresponding secretary of my chapter since 2017. My career goals are to work in community pharmacy and eventually become a pharmacy professor. I love writing, and I also write for my university's newspaper. As a fun fact, I have a cat named Luna and a turtle named Winslowna. So grammar, who cares? Well, a lot of people care, including professors, employers, scholarship committees, business partnerships, references, and you. I hope by the end of this presentation, you'll have gained an appreciation for why grammar should matter to you. First, I will be discussing email etiquette. First, I will be discussing some general email etiquette. Firstly, no sent from my iPhone when you send an email. You can arrange to have an email signature set up through your mobile phone, so that way you wouldn't get just a generic response like that at the end of your email. Also, always utilize subject lines with an identifier when you send an email. For instance, if you're emailing a professor regarding a certain course, make sure you include the course name and number, and perhaps even a section number, in with your email, so that way they know what you're emailing in regards to. Also, always be sure to address the person you are emailing with a correct title, such as Dr., Mrs., Ms., or Mr. However, in some instances, you might be unsure of the recipient's gender if you've never met with them before. For instance, someone with a name like Pat or Jamie. Also, if you have a professor or a person you're emailing who might have an ethnic name and you're unsure of the gender, it might be more appropriate to address them as with their first name and last name to avoid offense. So, for instance, you could say, Dear Sam Smith, and that way you avoid any awkwardness that might occur if you address them by the incorrect gender. Also, a rule of thumb is to always proofread your email before you send it. It might help to read an email out loud or have a friend read it to give you some feedback. Additionally, be sure that you're watching your tone in your emails. Things such as, if you could get back to me, ... might sound like you're being impatient or a little bit rude. Also, all caps can be taken as yelling in an email or seeming kind of demanding. Also, sending things with multiple question marks after it, such as okay, might sound like you're being just a little rude or impatient again. Additionally, be sure that you're timely in your responses to email correspondence. If you receive an email from someone, try to answer it within 24 hours is a great rule of thumb. Let's look at a sample. Hi, I was hoping you could get extra credit because exam question number 5 was not clearly stated in the notes and it was unfair. If you could email me back as soon as possible, that would be appreciated. Ella Salter, pharmacy student. So what was wrong with sample 1? Firstly, there is no subject line. The person receiving the email would have no idea what they're referring to, what class, subject, title, anything. Also, it was inappropriate greeting for the recipient. Clearly, Ella was emailing a professor in regards to an examination. However, she didn't greet them with Dear Professor, Dear Mr., etc. Also, how does the professor know Ella? How do they know her from anyone else? What class was she talking about? What exam was this in regards to? This is where the subject line might come in handy. Also, she had quite an unprofessional tone in her email. Her first sentence was sort of run on, and she stated that it was unfair. This would not be a professional thing in correspondence with a professor. Also, her email had spelling and grammar errors. If you looked at the email signature closely, you could see that she spelled pharmacy wrong. Also, it might be more appropriate to say PharmD student from the University of Toledo or College of Pharmacy. Also, she had an unprofessional request in the email. She basically asked, I would like extra credit because it was unfair. She didn't give the professor any alternatives or ask to meet up to discuss her request. She basically just said, here's what I want, and please give it to me. She also had no closing with her email. She didn't say sincerely or with gratitude, regards. She just stated her email signature. Also, in regards to the email signature, it was a little bit subpar. It just had her name, incorrect spelling with the pharmacy student, and again, it doesn't give any association with the university that she's studying at, any other involvement she has, but we'll discuss more email signature etiquette in a few slides. Let's look at another sample. Dr. Juicebox. Hello, my name is Ella Salter, and I am a P2 student in your ABCD 2100 course. I was emailing because I was hoping to come in and review my exam. I am unavailable to come in during your office hours. I have class from 8:30 to 3:30 Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you would be able to meet after, before, or during lunch, I would appreciate that. Just let me know what would be a good time to meet with you. Thank you, Ella Salter. So what made Sample 2 better? Firstly, the subject line noted the class name and section number. So that way, if the professor was looking through their email inbox, they'd immediately know, oh, this is a student in my class, and I might want to prioritize my response to this question. Also, she addressed the professional title or greeting of the recipient. She notified the recipient by saying doctor, and perhaps in another case, she could have said professor, Mr., Mrs., but in this case, she gave a professional title. Also, she identified who she was and her association with the recipient. She mentioned that she was a student in the class of the professor. Also, she identified the purpose of her email message. She noted that she wanted to review her exam, and she gave her availability to do so. Additionally, she leaves the ultimate decision up to the recipient. She did provide when she was best available and why she couldn't meet during the office hours provided, but she did say at the end of the email, let them know what works best for them, not what worked best for Ella. Also, she gave an appropriate closing in her email response with thank you. She did spell and grammar check prior to sending, and it looked nice and professional to be received by a professor. And in this case, she had an excellent email signature. It mentions that she's a PharmD candidate in what year. She also mentioned that she's associated with the University of Toledo and a little bit of professional involvement with Lambda Kappa Sigma. As promised, I will next discuss email signatures. A few qualities of good email signatures include a name with credentials, such as your bachelor's degree, master's degree, PharmD, etc. If you're associated with a university, perhaps the university's name or logo. Also, an expected graduation date and PharmD candidate would be appropriate for a pharmacy student. Additionally, the recipient would probably appreciate some contact information in your email signature, such as a phone number, also with an extension, an alternate email address, perhaps if you have a Gmail or something associated outside of a university email, and perhaps a home or office address. Also, with an email signature, you might want to tailor the content specifically to who you are corresponding with. If it's a professional or career-related email that you're sending, perhaps changing the email signature to best reflect that would be a great idea. Also, you want to make sure that your email signature isn't a CV or a resume in itself. You want to just list important involvement or affiliations. If you do so, you want to make sure that you include the full name of the organization, not just Greek letters. So I would say Lambda Kappa Sigma, Professional Pharmacy Fraternity, not just the Greek letters, Lambda Kappa Sigma. Also, you might want to focus on leadership roles, such as vice president or secretary, and maybe not listing organizations that you're just a member of. Also, you might want to list honor societies or any other nationally recognized organizations that you're in, such as the Rho Chi Honor Society. This would be something that the email recipient would recognize and perhaps be more receptive to seeing. Also, it's okay to list member-only roles, only if you have no other leadership experiences. Again, the point of an email signature is to kind of highlight the high points about yourself. So leadership experiences would stand out a bit more, but maybe if you're a younger student or are not yet involved in leadership roles, just listing those membership things is okay too. Also, just to emphasize one more time, avoid listing too much or unrelated information in your signature. It is not a CV. Next, I will touch on some basic punctuation review. First, let's discuss commas. Commas are used to separate ideas or elements within a sentence or after a greeting or closing. For example, if you're addressing Mr. Smith, you would say, Dear Mr. Smith, comma. Similarly, as a closing, you may say, Sincerely, comma, Elizabeth. In regards to splitting up elements of a sentence, you could say, we climbed the lighthouse, comma, and then we ate at the buffet. Also, if you're listing items in terms of a list of things, you might want to say, I ordered cake, comma, ice cream, comma, and sprinkles. I wanted to add a little side note here. I put the comma after ice cream in red because this comma is known as the Oxford comma. There's some debate among English professionals with the use of the comma before the last item in a series. Some people say it's unnecessary to list it before the final and or in a list of items, but it's kind of up to the person writing at this point in English. But I just want to make you aware that sometimes you may not see that comma before the last item, and sometimes you might. But in this case, it seems to be acceptable to do so either way at this point in time. Next, I'll discuss semicolons. Semicolons are used to connect independent thoughts. These ideas could stand alone, but can be related by using a semicolon. For example, Buddy was barking incessantly, semicolon. I knew that pesky squirrel must be back at it again. As you can see, these two ideas could stand alone as separate sentences, but by using a semicolon, we're able to relate the ideas together. It just kind of helps to create a relationship aspect. Next up, colons. Colons are used for introducing a series, quotation, or an example. She needed to pass 4 subjects to get into pharmacy school, colon, chemistry, biology, statistics, and calculus. In this example, you can see that a colon was used to introduce a list of upcoming items. Colons can also be used similar to a semicolon to break up 2 independent thoughts. I didn't have time to curl my hair, colon. I was already going to be late to the party. As you can see, these 2 ideas could have stood alone and probably could have ended with a period, but using a colon helped to show a relationship and bind the ideas together a little more than 2 separate sentences could have. Similarly, colons can be used to show emphasis. There was one woman she knew would always have her back, colon, her mom. Using a colon in this instance helps maybe draw a point home or to really grab your attention. The sentence easily could have been reorganized to say, her mom was the one woman she knew would always have her back. But that sentence just doesn't have the oomph that using a colon to say, her mom really does at the end. So again, it can kind of be used to show emphasis or really draw a point home. Next up, the dash. A dash is used to separate words into statements. One thing I actually learned by doing this presentation are that there are multiple forms of dashes. First up is the en dash, en. It is used to indicate a range or connections. For example, a range of years, such as 1855-1857, or to describe a connection, such as Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, with a dash between Lennox and Gastaut. Similarly, there's an em dash, em. When it's written, it's twice as long as the en dash, and it's often used in place of a comma, parentheses, or a colon to add emphasis or to conclude a statement. Her response was clear, em dash, no. So in this case, providing an em dash before the final no provided emphasis to a statement. Just be careful when you're typing because, as noted, the em dash is longer than the en dash and often involves inserting a character or use special coding to get it to show up on word processing units. Now for the hyphen. A hyphen is used to join 2 or more words together. For example, part-time, part-time, over easy, over hyphen easy, and back-to-back, back, hyphen, to, hyphen, back. Up next, we have brackets. Brackets are used to clarify the meaning of something. The sentence would still make sense if the material in the brackets were removed, but helps to act as a clarifier. For example, she, brackets, Dr. Johnson, brackets, was the last person in the pharmacy last night. The sentence merely could have said, she was the last person in the pharmacy last night, but who is she? She could be anyone. So by using brackets, we help to clarify who she was in this example. Now we'll discuss parentheses. Parentheses notate further thoughts or clarification. They usually can be replaced by commas without affecting the meaning of your sentence. For example, Jack and Jill, parentheses, who actually dated in the past, parentheses, were now working together at the deli. The sentence still would have made sense if it said, Jack and Jill were now working together at the deli, but by providing the information in parentheses, we get a little picture of furthering the idea or clarification of the statement. Had we not had the ideas in the parentheses, we have just known that Jack and Jill are working at the deli. But clarification of that is we see that they dated in the past. There's a little more to the story. So parentheses are a great way to show clarification and sometimes even emphasis. Now we will discuss apostrophes. Apostrophes are used to shorten a word or a phrase by indicating letters that are omitted. For example, can't, spelled C-A-N''T, stands for cannot. The apostrophe in this case represents the N-O that was left out between the words. Next, it can be used to show possession. For example, Ashley's bike. Ashley, apostrophe S, indicates that it's her bike. That's a singular possession because Ashley is one person. In our next example, the girls' horses, spelled G-I-R-L-S apostrophe at the end, shows a plural possession because there's more than one girl that owns the horse. Now let's talk about quotation marks. Double quotation marks are used to indicate an exact quote or something that's attributed to the words of someone else. Quotation mark, watch your siblings, quotation mark, she said. This indicates a direct quote that she had said. A single quotation mark are often used to quote within a quote. For example, Annabelle told her mother, double quote, I saw Sam eat the cookies, and when I asked him, he said that, single quote, he didn't eat any, single quote, but I knew he did, double quotations. In this idea, you can see that he didn't eat any was a quote within the quote that Annabelle was already saying. And for our last punctuation review, exclamation points. Exclamation points are used to express a sudden outcry or to add emphasis. For example, no way, exclamation point, I just won the lottery, exclamation point. In another example, the dog had an accident in the kitchen again, exclamation point. So in these cases, you can see in the lottery example, it was used to show exclamatory or an outcry about something. And in our second example about the dog, it's emphasis that, oh my gosh, this dog had an accident again. So just adding a little bit of extra oomph to that sentence to show the emotion behind it. However, I wanted to make a note that this specific punctuation mark comes with a cautionary statement. Be aware of exclamation point overuse. Use only one exclamation point in professional communication. It is not professional to get attention by using multiple exclamation points, such as in an email where you say, get back to me immediately with 3 exclamation points after this. This is actually deemed unprofessional and should be avoided. Also, keep in mind that exclamation points often carry an emotion with them, such as a harsh or yelling tone. So just be aware of your use of punctuation marks, such as exclamation points, in professional communication. For our next topic of discussion, commonly misused words. Next, I would like to discuss just a few examples that I could come up with of some commonly misused words in communication. First example is illicit versus elicit. In my example here, John tried to elicit information from his daughter regarding her illicit drug use. Illicit, beginning with an E, is often a word used to mean uncover or resolve. However, illicit with an I means illegal. In our next commonly misused word pairing, principal with a P-A-L versus principal with an L-E. In our example, the principal role of the high school principal was to lead by example. One way I always remember this is principal ending with a P-A-L is the person, because your school's principal should be your pal. Next up, I use the example of accept versus accept. You must accept with an A all parts of the terms and conditions except with an E the last paragraph. Accept with an A means it's something that you're accepting or agreeing to. However, accept with an E means everything except or without. In our final pairing here, farther versus further. Steve was willing to travel farther to further his education pursuit. Farther with an A means like a distance relation, whereas further means to take it to another level or advance. So just be careful when you're using these commonly misused words in your communication. In our next set of commonly misused word pairings, we have all together as two words versus all together as one word. The Smith family was all together two words in one room, and it was all together one word, the best family reunion yet. In the first example, all together, meaning that everyone was all together in one setting. However, all together used as one word in this case is used to say all in all or overall. So that's the one word use of all together. Next up, I have compliment with an E versus compliment with an I. John offered a compliment with an I to Stacy that her necklace complemented with an E her floral dress. Compliment with an I is something you would think of as someone giving someone words of admiration, whereas compliment with an E means it's complimenting something or giving it an additional accessory or working with it. Finally, affect versus effect. The destructive effect of the tornado would certainly affect many people of the town. Effect with an E means the result of something, while affect with an A means it's going to impact someone's life or something in some certain way. So again, these are just some commonly misused words I often see in communication, so just be aware of them in your writing. And lastly, I would just like to wrap up with some final thoughts on grammar. Next up, I wanted to list a couple useful tips in regards to grammar and writing. Utilize spelling and grammar checkers on word processors, but understand that they do have their limits. With most of us being medical professionals, we're often writing with long or complicated drug, disease, condition names. Drug names such as empagliflozin, moxifloxacin, oxymetazoline are often words that word processor checkers don't often catch on spell check. However, be careful in your writing and understand that if you're making spelling errors on this one, they might not necessarily catch it through the spell check features. If you're ever in doubt, Google common grammar rules. My references at the corner of these slides were pretty easy to find and accessible, and also provided some useful information if you're ever in doubt on grammar rules. Also, have a friend read over your work. Sometimes just having that second set of eyes helps to catch mistakes that you might not have otherwise caught on your own. Additionally, ask your professors. Many professors have certainly published many works and have years of experience in the field, so definitely utilize them as a source. Also, many universities offer writing and grammar centers. These staff members are often trained specifically to check certain documents, including resumes, research papers, etc., and would be more than happy to help you with any writing adventure you're undertaking. And finally, I would like to thank you for your time and attention today to my presentation. Please feel free to contact me at my contact information listed below if you have any questions or feedback. I'll be more than happy to help you in any way that I can. Thank you and have a great rest of your day. Lambs love.